Hello there. I want to discuss round four of the chess Grand Prix that's going on right now, the FIDE Chess Grand Prix. A good tournament so far. This game is between GM Mamedyarov with the white pieces and British GM longtime number one Michael Adams with the black pieces. This was a very important game for the tournament standings. Mamedyarov was in second place at the beginning of this round with 2.5 out of 3. And in first place was Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, who was perfect 3-0. And he drew his game today with Hikaru Nakamura. So if Mamedyarov could win this game against GM Adams, he would go into sole first place. So this game started off with Mamedyarov playing d4. And for those who you don't know GM Mamedyarov, he's a strong attacking player. He plays queens pawns openings, but he plays them in like the spirit of uh, Aliakin. You know, he plays like d4, but in a very aggressive style. Knight f6. Michael Adams, on the other hand, is very solid player. He's one of my favorite players actually because of the clarity of his play. I'm able to understand his games, due to it. And Nigel Short's another player like that. The games come across to me very clearly as far as what they're doing in the game. Very logical play. So this made for a good matchup. Michael Adams, just to let you know, is a long-time Nimzo Indian defense player. And this is one of the move orders to get there, knight f6 and e6. And after knight c3, which was played by Mamedyarov, many games you'll find Michael Adams bringing that bishop out to b4. But d5, Queen's Gambit decline is also in his repertoire. It's also a very solid option besides just going into the Nimzo. Mamedyarov goes for the exchange variation, one of the favorites of a lot of amateur players, but at the same time, a favorite of many GMs. There's many Grandmaster games with this line that is very dangerous line, and I think it's one of the few openings that appeal, I think, equally to top players and amateur players at the same time as the Queen's Gambit um, decline exchange variation. I know at one time Levon Aronian, and that's one of the downsides of playing this move order right here, is because some players, in order to try to avoid the exchange variation, instead of playing, of course, going in via Nimzo Indian, they'll play it like this: c4, e6, and then on knight c3, instead of bringing the knight out to f6, they will play this move bishop e7. And then white, of course, has to delay what he's going to do with this bishop. And sometimes he'll play it anyway, but it's not the same. This bishop winds up going here. Then you have a different game. And then after this bishop commits, only then does this knight hop out. And this was a specialty of Levon Aronian. He would play like that. But if you go via this move order, you already brought your knight out to f6 and c4, e6. There's no turning back. You're not going to bring the knight back here. So after knight c3, d5, now he goes right in for it. And boom, there's the pin. So that's something that you got to, think of also if you don't like to play against the exchange variation. c6, there's many defenses that black can choose from here. I'm not going to get into all of those. That would be like a separate video altogether. I mean, this is talk about a labyrinth of lines Um, you'll find it in this opening. So e3 was played, and again, there's many different ways for black to play. He plays h6 here, which is kind of little bit rare. H6, looking in the database, you don't find this, many games like that. But H6 is one of those moves that usually come rolling out sooner or later. So black kind of, hides his intentions just a little longer. I mean, usually you might see moves like Bishop E7, or even Knight B E7. But I think Bishop E7 is probably the most common in castling. But like I said, there's many plans that black chooses. Sometimes black will play Bishop F5 himself. Um, Sometimes they'll play this move Bishop E7 and not castle and play Knight here and then here. Then the Knight I come here. So, or the Knight I come here in combination with H6. So, again, like I said, that's like a separate discussion in the video altogether. So H6 is played, Bishop H4, Bishop E7, Bishop D3. Now things start looking a little bit more normal. Knight BD7. Luboyevich played in a game a long time ago. I think it was a draw where he played Bishop E6 first and then Knight BD7. So he didn't block this bishop in. Again, normal move would just be castle. Nothing wrong with it. Knight BD7 and Knight GE2. Now here's an important point. Now there's different plans for white also. White many times will just simply play Knight F3, of course, and he has basically two kind of plans in this position. One is the attack on the queen side, attacking his calls, bad structure, with moves like Rook B1 and moves like B4 and B5. And what the effect this has on black's pawn structure, that being fixed and static as it is what white wants to do is trade off on C6, which then moves this pawn base from B7, which is a little further away, transfers it up here to C6, and then white will continue to attack this weakness by lining up on the C file, usually with rook or queen. The queen is usually already here on C2. And then another aspect also with this weakness is that the square in front, which is C5, is also weak. And many times you'll see this knight go to A4 and then C5. And just kind of play a long positional game and squeeze black on the queen side. That's one plan. The other plan is to generally play in the center with moves like F3 followed by E4, looking to take space in the center and then eventually build up an attack on the king side. Sometimes white will even castle queen side if he's real enterprising. So Knight GE2 is a move to look out for because he's leaving his F pawn free to advance for some reason. Also, sometimes you might see these plans combined with each other. This idea of expansion on the queen side with the expansion in the center also. Knight H5 is played. And bishop takes E7. Queen takes E7. And now queen D2. And again, now white is giving some more information to his plans. He plays queen D2 so that this pawn is protected because he plans on playing the move F3. Okay, so if he goes to queen C2, which is a normal looking move, then it will be hard to get in the move F3 because this queen on E7 is bearing down here. So queen D2 protects the pawn, allows white to continue on with his plan. Adams plays knight b6, unblocking the bishop, and hoping to be able to get to here eventually with that knight, seeing that the queen is in a vulnerable spot there. Mamedyarov continues with his plan of f3, bishop d7. Adams just needs somewhere to put the bishop, so he just gets it off the back rank. He just simply develops it. He doesn't block the queen, but he just develops the bishop for the time being. Castle, castle, and this move kind of caught me off guard. G4 when I first looked at the game, because I was fully expecting, uh, continuation like just E4 here, and where white would have, just a slight space advantage in the center. Nothing big, but play could continue. D takes, F takes, and then maybe C5, D5, and we had this battle against the central pawns for black, and white, of course, trying to um, advance them slowly but surely, cramping the black position. That's what I was expecting. And here, I have to move like queen e5. Black is in the game. Black has a good position. Eventually, this knight will return f6 to put more pressure here. All right. However, Mamedyarov has something else up his sleeve, and he played g4. So he attacks this knight right here, but of course, in the process, weakens dark squares a little bit. Now, any weakness is important, but it's not as critical now that the dark square bishops have been exchanged, because there's really no way for white to exploit the weak color complex right now, except with this queen. If he could somehow get his queen in there, maybe in conjunction with some other pieces. But one thing I noticed about black's position is that this bishop is kind of, even though it's developed technically, it really needs to be redeployed. But right now, it's kind of, at the best place it could be right now. It's hard to find a better square for that bishop right now. You would love to, if you could trade this bishop for this bishop, you would do it, take it in a heartbeat. But Mamedyarov played excellently against this bishop. This bishop is kind of, just off the back rank, but useless beside that. This knight here too is kind of out of place right now. So it's like he's taking advantage of the awkwardness of Adams' pieces right now. So G4 just drives the knight back to F6. And now a common theme in this opening is the knight redeployment. Sometimes the knight comes to F4, and sometimes it comes to G3. So we see, of course, the idea from Mamedyarov of kingside attack here. Knight E8, good move by Adams. His idea is to redeploy this knight to E6, again with this idea of coming in here and not only hitting the queen, but then you will have a double attack on this pawn right here on E3. Okay. Rook A E1. Now we see white has all his pieces developed, and now he's ready for E4. I always talk about opposition in my videos, and I'm not talking about endgame opposition, but just the opposition of a piece of lesser value to a piece of high value. Here he had the rook on E1 opposed to the queen on E7. And this is always good for the player that has a piece of lesser value, because it might not happen in the next 3 or 4 moves. It might not happen until 10 or 15 moves down the road. But usually this type of opposition is bad for the player with the high value piece, because tactical opportunities often arrives at the most inconvenient time, and next thing you know, this rook is attacking the queen on e7. Right now, there's a pawn between, but soon, a move like e4 will be played, pawns will be exchanged, and next thing you know, black will have to answer the question of what to do with that queen. So after rook a e1, Adams played knight d6. He continued on with his plan. And of course, Mamedyarov played e4. And notice how much fortification Mamedyarov has on e4. He has his rook on e1, knight g3, knight c3, and the bishop on d3, and the pawn on f3, all supporting the e4 advance. So now the game gets very sharp here. So d takes e4, right from Adams. F takes e4. And notice now this pawn is on prise, and this bishop is free. Okay? So Mamedyarov had to see all of this. His bishop is now free. So black is going to have some counterplay here. All right. Adams doesn't take the pawn. Right? He plays this first, which is a strong move. Knight c4 attacking the queen. Queen goes to c1 because he's not only attacking the queen, but this pawn is also some trouble. So queen c1. Now he picks up the pawn. Bishop takes g4. Okay, and now the game enters into its critical point now, because black has kind of freed his position up. Remember that bishop was on d7 undeveloped, and now he's down. Now white has kingside wide open. He's down a pawn, and black's knights have improved dramatically. All right, but what white's major trump in this position is the center. His dominance in the center with those pawns allows him to be able to kind of have this open king side, because it's very difficult for white to exploit the open G and F files. So let's continue. Mamedyarov pushed the knight away and played b3, which is a very natural move. Another alternative, of course, is rook f4, just challenging this bishop that's unprotected. So play could go, rook f4, bishop e6, and then maybe b3. But b3 was played first. And here Adams thought for a while, and he decided to sacrifice a piece here. And we'll get into why in just a second. But he played rook a d8. So I think he valued the white center as being that important that he needs to destroy it, and it's worth these one of these knights that's kind of off to the side, so to speak. Okay, so he played rook a d8. Now let's look at the alternatives. Of course, if b3 was played. Now one move he could have played was actually there were three moves here. Let's get this one out the way. Okay, on knight d6. Okay, that's possible. So e5, right? Again, wanting to just simply take the knight. And I don't like that move because so knight dc8, and this is possible. Knight g4, and then queen h4, and I think the game. See, white has an advantage in the center here, but I like black's position on the king side. He's starting to infiltrate these weak squares. This knight's gonna come into d5 eventually, but it's still a little awkward looking for black, the way his pieces are here. So play could continue from here. Say queen f4, knight d5. Okay, but then already white has some powerful tactics. So for instance, knight f6 here, check. This is all forced. And let's say, just for argument's sake, g takes. Well, queen e4 is really strong, threatening mate. You see, so I just wanted to show you that to show you how murky the position can get, but also how much potential is in white central pawns here. So instead of g takes, knight takes, e takes, and then again you have to be very careful of grabbing this pawn with that, because queen e4. Again, queen e4 with this discovered attack on the queen. So black has to be very careful in that position. But again, I wanted to show you that because I want you to see how Michael Adams was worried about these central pawns. So that was knight d6. Knight a3. Another move. And play could go, these are just sample lines that I worked on while I was getting ready for this game. So rook f4, bishop h3, natural looking move. Now e5 again, pushing in the center. Now of course this allows a move like that, but it opens up the diagonal for the white pieces. So it's give and take. So for instance, let's just say bishop e6, knight h5, and notice the attacking ideas of the of white made possible by this pawn advance to e5. Now again, here's another sample line. If king h8, which is very natural, right, just to move to the side, there's a very powerful move. Rook f6, that just wins. This idea is very strong. The rook takes, and of course, if pawn takes, it's a wrap. Now, of course, instead of king h8, queen g5 check, and then knight g3, and then the game will continue. But I just wanted to show you again how the lines that and complications that Adams had to work through, and which led him to say, hey, maybe I should give up this piece because this center is too strong. Now the third possibility, instead of knight a3 or knight d6, is knight a5. Again, play could have gone knight f4. I did check right on d3, excuse me, d4, and so knight e2, knight c8, and this is like the more peaceful variation, more peaceful way to look at it. Again, we see white central pawns. Now I think this is more like equal, but the central pawns are very, very dangerous and full of potential. Remember, the power of mobile pawns cannot be underestimated. And I think all these things, and of course I had the luxury of, be able to sit down with the computer and look not only at this game but many other Grandmaster games and in comfort. So I mean, imagine you're sitting at the board, you had this attacking strong Grandmaster with the white pieces, and you have to think of all of these different lines. So this is where Michael Adams is at right now. So after b3, he decided not to move the knight. So it's not that he just didn't see it. He just he saw those ideas. He probably saw pieces of all those lines and determined, hey, this center is gonna, something else gonna lead to a kingside attack. So he decided that, hey, maybe I should let this piece go and get a few pawns in return. And I think he made the right practical decision. Let's look at what happened. So after rook a d8, knight f5, attacking the queen, bishop takes, e takes, queen f6. Okay, so there's your sacrifice right there of the piece. So he's saying, hey, take the piece. But he's ready to take with check there. So he takes with the bishop, knight takes, and b takes. So there it is. White is officially up a piece here. So what does black get in return? Well, he gets the pawn. Oh, he has 2 pawns. And all the white pawns are all chopped up. So he has four isolated pawns. Black has 6 pawns, only 2 pawn islands. But he is down a piece. And the thing is too is white's king is a little open. So what is black done here? He has destroyed white's center for all intents and purposes, and that's why he gave up the piece. So he has 2 pawns. He destroyed the white center, and the white king is open. So that's kind of his compensation for the piece. It's a murky compensation, and I think murky positions kind of favor like tactically inclined players. So this is kind of, to me, more in favor of Mamedyarov style, having like an unclear position, because he's in that mold of like Tal and Shirov and Morozevich, and where Adams is more in that Karpov Kramnik line, where things should be, wants things more clear. So let's continue. So king h1, right? King was in check. King h1, rook fe8, f6. Adams wants to trade. Queen takes c1, and now he gets the 3rd pawn. Queen takes c4. Okay. Now if g6, queen e7, it's dangerous for black, because now the b7 pawn is threatened, and these are assets for black. Black can't just afford to give, he's down a piece. He can't afford to give away pawns like that. Okay, so queen takes c4 is played. Now f takes g7, rook d6, and now Mamedyarov plays the move rook g1, and of course the threat is real primitive. It's play queen e8 here. Now this, to me, allows Michael Adams a spectacular chance. Stronger for Mamedyarov would have been the move rook f3. The idea here is if the move rook g6 and you have queen e7, now king takes g7, it's pretty much forced, and now Mamedyarov is able to start snapping up these pawns. Rook f6, queen b3, king g2, rook g4, and now this simplification is good for white, because now, even though it's 4 pawns to 2, these isolated pawns would be very hard for white to realize, and his king is also exposed. So he's kind of taking on some of the weaknesses white had, and he has the bad pawns. So those pawns, any one of those pawns queening is going to be very difficult. However, he played the move rook g1. Adams played rook g6. Of course, now if queen e8, then king just takes g7. Mamedyarov played queen e5 here. Okay, so he's holding on to the pawn, protecting his knight. In some cases, he's threatening check here, and then again grab this pawn. Adams played queen e6. Now, he missed a tremendous opportunity here with queen d3. And the idea with queen d3 is, for example, queen e8, check, and now king takes g7. Now you have rook takes, g takes, f takes, queen e5, king g2. I just run through this real quick, and it's very difficult for white to continue to safely avoid these checks, and eventually a perpetual will result. And that's why queen d3 was stronger. Again, queen d3, and now I showed you queen e8 check. If rook takes g6 here, this is immediate perpetual after queen f1. And queen goes back to f3, and it just keeps going back and forth. So queen d3 was definitely the better move if you want to draw. So queen e6 was played, queen b8, check, king takes, and now this allowed Mamedyarov to snap off the pawn from the queen side. And this is taking away some of white's advantage. Instead of white just winning the g7 pawn for, instead of black just winning the g7 pawn for nothing, he allowed Mamedyarov to trade the g7 pawn for the a7 pawn. So that's a net plus for white. So queen c4, attacking the knight. Queen e3. b5. So this is the right idea by Adams, is to push the majority. He has the pawns in compensation. He should try to push them. Now, it was much better when he had 3 pawns on the queen side, but he still has 2 extra pawns. So a3, playing against b4, c5, knight e4, and now Adams played f5. And this is a blunder. This is a blunder right here. After rooks, after rook takes g6 check, king takes, knight c5, black is just plain lost right here. There's nothing that can help him. At the queen, for instance, he has no perpetual or anything here. If the queen f1, queen g1 happens, that's check also, forcing the trade of queens. You got the knight here, pawn here, and that's going to be a loss for black. So the game continues. Knight takes e5, and queen d5, king g1, d1, check, king g2, and Adams trying to get a perpetual here, but Mamedyarov sees that black is going to run out of checks, which he does, and then he just turns the attack against Adams. And Adams resigned right here at move 43. If king h5, then just knight f6 wins the game. If king f4, then just queen g3, and the game will be over in short fashion. So f5 was a serious blunder. What he had to play was b4, just keep pushing those pawns on the queen side. The idea being rook takes g6, f takes, and let's say if knight takes c5, this is actually great for black, because now on queen f1 check, queen g1 is not going to work, because notice this is not open, but after queen g1, black has no problem taking here. Queen takes, king takes, b takes a3. Now this knight is solely occupied here with stopping this pawn. And this is just a sample line where black can win this. And the basic idea is he keeps the white knight distracted on the side with the a2 pawn, and then he pushes his 2-to-1 majority against the white king side. See, and now he gets it to that point where now the white king has to keep an eye on this, on the king side pawns, and the knight has to stay over there. This king is free to walk over to the king side now. Excuse me, to the well, to the white king side, to the white queen side. I'm sorry. So king f5, and that's the basic idea. Now you might say, well, why not d3? Because you got to be careful because of the fork. Check, and then you just pick up this pawn. Then we'll be losing. So this is why e5 has to be played. H3. Again, the king is preoccupied with this pawn. This gives black the time he needs, and this is like an endgame study. Gives black the time he needs to get over there, and the king is too far away to assist the knight. And of course, I don't need to go any further because this pawn is going to queen and win the game. This is why b4 was very powerful. To keep pushing those pawns. That's your assets. You gotta go with it. Okay, so that was the main idea with that. Of course, that was based on rook takes g6. Now, if just the normal move, a takes b4, c takes, and now rook takes. And of course, notice white is in a better position, of course, to stop the pawn. And of course, this is just sample lines, but you know, to me, the game is unclear. I don't think black is winning, but I don't think white is winning either. But instead of the superior move b4, this move f5 was played. I don't have the time stamp in front of me, so I'm not sure if Adams was in severe time trouble or not. Because this is at move 35. This could have been a time pressure motivated move right here. And again, I could see that he wanted to, move this, get this knight out of there. But I just wanted to show you this. I don't think I showed you this line either. Yeah, actually I did with rook takes g6. Actually, this is what I wanted to show you. After b4, again the correct move, and in this line, rook takes g6, f takes g6. I showed you knight takes c5. It's even worse if white goes queen takes c5, because again, they change the queens here, knight takes, and again, it's the same. I didn't go into, the big analysis here, but it's the same idea. This knight will be stuck here, right? The knight is forced to, to go to b3 to stop this pawn, and then this king, these pawns will advance. Say the fourth rank, unify together. This king will be forced to stick over here. This, so one of them doesn't queen, and while the king is stuck on the king side and the knight is stuck on the queen side, this king will just walk over and basically promote the pawn. Okay, so you can put an exclamation mark on this move b4, and you can put a question mark on this move right here, because that's what ultimately lost the game. And notice the difference in the position after here. You see, there's no way this pawn can be any danger of advancing or anything. So very interesting game. It's unfortunate that Michael Adams dropped two of these three queenside pawns. I mean, literally kind of blundered them away, because he played. I thought his piece sacrifice was very interesting. Very very interesting. But unfortunately, he wound up just losing two out of three of those pawns that he had, and that was like his compensation. Once he lost that, it was like he had no compensation for the sacrifice material. But I do like that sacrifice. I mean, with all the other lines I was showing you, and you probably have to watch this video maybe more than once to kind of like absorb everything, because it is a lot of analysis. But the game was heavy. You know, the game was pretty complicated. But anyway, that's it for today. I hope you learned something. Please subscribe, and all comments are welcome. So I'll see you guys on the next video.